Hello, everyone. I am Al Tyree. I'm Partner Manager here at ERP Suites. Thank you very much for attending our joint webinar session today with AllOut Security. Some housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded and will be available later today. Also, you may ask questions in the Q&A section. A little about us. ERP Suites provides comprehensive technology solutions to help companies not just identify IT potential, but realize it. Our advisory practice provides services and products utilizing JD Edwards orchestration and process automation. Cloud services, we support AWS, OCI, and Microsoft Azure, and our own public or private cloud solution. We also provide managed services and consulting services, which includes JD Edwards security practice and cyber security. It is my pleasure to present and introduce our speakers for today. Sherry Conradi, Solutions Director of AllOut Security, and Brian Connor, Director of JD Edwards Security and Cybersecurity Architect at ERP Suites. Both Sherry and Brian are well known and respected in the JD Edwards user community for their expertise and knowledge in JD Edwards security, auditing, and compliance. Sherry and Brian, take it away.
Thanks so much, Al. That was a sweet introduction. I'm really looking forward to working with Brian on this thing and working with our gold partner, ERP Suites. AllOut, we are a security and compliance tool for JD Edwards. We are currently working towards building educational webinars with our partners, with the community, and focusing around audit, compliance, and security. Our main focus is to streamline those tasks for you, help educate you on best practices, and steer you in the right direction when it comes to security, because it can be quite overwhelming. So the neat, unique thing about AllOut is the fact that it's super easy to install. It's not an implementation for your install at all. You get to really focus on the projects that your company has rather than the installation of the software. We are native to JDE, so we live and breathe in JD Edwards. We use the same tables you do. We use the same terminology. That's great for a few reasons, because we understand the best practices in JD Edwards. We know how JD Edwards security and compliance and all the tools in native JD Edwards works. When you know the terminology, you know how it works in standard JD Edwards, we're there with you. We just sort of amplify it and put some muscle in it, make things easier, and add some functionality that really help you achieve your goals in security and compliance. It's a subscription product, so it's very flexible. And the great part is we have partners like ERP Suites. They are our gold partner. We're very proud to have them. They are your consultants, the ones that can really help you get those projects done. And they are the experts also in the security and compliance arena. So they really help you focus with your stakeholders in your projects of how you need them done. The unique thing about JD Edwards is each way that each business has it set up is very unique and very different. And you can really rely on your partners, the consulting partner like Brian here, who's going to be working with me, and Al and ERP Suites, to really focus and help you achieve the goals of security and compliance, which can be overwhelming, as I mentioned. So Brian is our clicker to the next screen. So when we pause, you know why. So we do have a really great agenda for you today. We are going to go over those common security obstacles that you may see and find in your standard day-to-day life. Give you those great tips on how you can really improve it and be more efficient. There's always costs when it comes to those stops, those obstacles. You know, if you are stopping to do something or not sure or having to click too much, there are costs involved with all that. So we'll help you understand that, and we'll help you get a plan to put all the pieces together and understand what you may be able to do to help take over those security obstacles. Wow, I was tongue-tied there, Brian. I'm going to leave it and give it over to you now.
I guess it's time to take a rest.
Yeah, I guess so. All
All
right.
right.
Now
Thank
you're
you,
cooking. You
Sherry.
don't have to pause. No problem. Thanks, Brian.
Absolutely. Um, Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Very glad to have you with us. One of the things that's been mentioned is doing the educational webinars. That's one thing I am very passionate about in the JD Edwards space is educating everyone. So if you ever have a question and you just want a little bit of advice or want to know how to do something, we're here to try to provide as much education in the JD Edwards security space as possible. All right, so today we're talking about obstacles. There are many security obstacles in JD Edwards. We don't have time to cover all, so we've got our top 5. As Sherry said, we're going to talk about what the obstacles are, what you can do to overcome them or produce some radical efficiency in your system, and then quantify, as Sherry said, some of the costs associated with those obstacles. So the first one that we're going to go over is role conflicts. So in JD Edwards, everybody has a role. That's how you're able to log into the system. So what are some of the obstacles for role conflicts? So this might be manifested in users having to log in and out of JDE to get the correct security applied to do their job. Maybe they have multiple logins with those different roles assigned to be able to get done what they need to be done there. Maybe you're resequencing the roles to adjust the applicable security. That leads to this last bullet, which is I was able to do it yesterday, but it's not working today. Or even worse, I was able to do it this morning, but I come back from lunch and log in again, and it's not working anymore. With that, before we get into how to be efficient in this, we want to make sure everybody understands how JDE security hierarchy works in the system. Every button click, every screen view, everything you do in JDE, it's looking at this security table, and it does it in a very defined manner. First, it looks at your user level. So is there any security for the user for the program that I'm trying to access? If it finds security, it stops looking. So it doesn't matter if you have something at the user level, you can have 1 or 10 roles that also have security for the particular object. But the first time JDE sees security applied, it stops looking. That's what causes that role conflict issue. If it doesn't find anything at the user level, it's going to continue on and look at your roles. And it looks at the roles in a defined manner. It looks at your high sequence roles first. So in this example, the user has 2 roles. One is sequence 20, and then one is sequence 10. Again, the first security record that it comes to, it applies that and it stops looking. So it doesn't matter if you have more permissive security in the second role, it found something, it applies it, and you move on. If it doesn't find security in those roles, it then goes down to your catch-all, which is your star public. And this is really important why you need to have your catch-all set up properly, your star public, star all set up in order to make sure that your security is being as efficient as possible. And I want to give a call out to Sherry. Typically over the last 10 years doing security, AllOut has had a pyramid that they've used to explain the security hierarchy. This is a new way of looking at it that Sherry put together. So I want to thank Sherry for sharing that with me for today's webinar.
My pleasure. And I have to say, I think this is one of the points that is hard to visualize and one of the key factors when you're thinking about a user and how they're logging in and what they're able to do, but also from an audit and compliance, when you start to look at those reports, why does somebody have that kind of access? And understanding this hierarchy is important for both of those reasons. So I love that we get to educate on the hierarchy because I think it's something that gets skipped and not really understood well.
I agree. It is one of these foundational areas that is really important to understand how it works so that you know why you have role conflicts.
I have the little pyramid printed out and by my monitor still to this day. So if you guys ever want to print that out so you understand what the difference is, don't feel bad. We've all done it. We all have to look once in a while, like, why did that happen that way? It's always the best spot to look at. Sort of like when you turn on your computer, it's not working, reboot. When you're not sure about security hierarchy, go back to that pyramid thought so you can try to figure out what it is.
Absolutely. All right, so we have role conflicts. We understand how the role hierarchy works. So how can I achieve efficiency in this? So I hinted at it before. You look at leverage your star public. What does this mean? You have your star public, star all settings set up with the correct baseline value. Our recommendation is run and install no, and your action security is add, change, delete no, okay, yes, and copy no. The only time you need to have any action security for any program is if it's different than star public. You're leveraging the architecture that JDE is built to your benefit, and it's exactly the way it's supposed to work. If you put the same settings that you have at star public in your roles, now you're it's finding those records and it's going to apply the first one that it comes to, even if another role has the add, change, delete, yes. So leverage that star public setup. Absolutely is going to maybe not eliminate all of your application and action conflicts, but 95% of them. The next is to group your roles logically. So as we know, it's going to look at the highest sequence role first, and whatever it finds there, it's going to apply. So if you create your roles in a logical, or group them in a logical sequence where your, highest sequence number roles all at the range 3,000 and above have your add, change, delete, and then the next group down has only add and change, all the way down to your anything that's under 1,000 in your sequence number is inquiry. You've kind of architected it in a way that it makes sense so that your highest sequence role is going to take precedence. So your add, change, delete access is going to take precedence over your inquiry access. So those are both base JDE ways of becoming more efficient in your role design setup. The last, from an all-out perspective, is the all-out security combi roles functionality. What this does is it looks at all of the roles that are assigned to the user, whether it's 2 or 20, and looks for any of those conflicts, and then it creates an override record to resolve it. So with all out, it doesn't matter what your role sequence number is. It fixes the issue. We still recommend leveraging your star public because you want to eliminate any conflicts wherever possible, and it also produces efficiency in the size of your security table by doing that. So what's the cost of role conflicts? So if you have users that are having to log in and log out of JDE to get the right security, whether it's logging in with a specific role or you've got your CNC or somebody resequencing the roles to get the right security applied to them, we take an example here and quantify it. So if you have a relatively modest JDE user count of 150 users, and if they have to log in and out only twice during the day to resolve a security conflict, so log out with one role, log in with the other, then log out, log in with the all roles to get their job done, your cost, your opportunity cost here is almost $39,000 over the course of a year. And that's with only 150 users and only doing it twice a day. If they have to do it 3 times a day, it rises to $58,000. So resolving this doesn't mean you're necessarily going to have cash back in your employee budget account. But what it means is that your employees are being that much more efficient. This is your opportunity cost in lost time for all of your employees. So it's important to quantify, if I'm having to do this, what is the actual cost to my business in efficiency?
I just want to say too, with that role conflicts, when it comes to audit, it's huge because not only, you want people not to be able to, like you said, don't have multiple logins, don't make them do those extra click. If audit finds out people have multiple logins, it makes your audit process a lot more, and that would add to your costs too. So It's a great idea there with the roles, giving it a good basic. Thanks so much there, Brian.
You bet. All right, so what's our next obstacle? So one of the other things that we see quite a bit is in menu filtering. So I want to make sure I call this out. Menu filtering is not security. It never has been, it never will be. What it is the original, or what I call the original user experience or user interface. What menu filtering does is allows you to limit what a user sees when they log into their JDE. When they click that navigator button on the web, how much data, how many folders, and what's being presented to them. If you have a huge menu, it can be extremely confusing for an end user to find what they need. So you've got to click through lots of folders. If you don't have access to the programs within it, you end up with dead-end navigation and you're trying to find that one specific program or version that you need. To bypass that, most users end up adding what they need to favorites. I've been at many companies where those favorites are just propagated. Copy the favorites from Brian to Sherry, copy the favorites from Sherry to Al. And by the time Al gets it, he has absolutely no idea where on the menu any of these things are. They're only on the favorites. And if favorites go away, we're completely lost. So why don't more companies leverage menu filtering? Again, it's not about security. It's about user interface and making sure that they only see what they need to see to do their jobs. Make it efficient, make it easy. When you do that, it also improves your performance, because if you've got huge menus, the time spent on the back-end server to render all of those things will take additional time.
Hey, Brian, one of the questions I get asked a lot, and just this is a basic 101, but you're saying menu filtering, which I understand what menu filtering is, locking, not seeing what you don't need to see to get where you are. But what's the difference when people start saying task view? Because we have some people that have been on JD Edwards for a long time, and then we have some new people coming into JD Edwards, and there's some different terminology. Could you just explain a little bit different there? So when you're talking to your group and they're talking menu filtering, you're just talking about what they see on the screen. What's the task view itself?
We are talking, so your menu and your task view are kind of two sides of the same coin. So your
Right.
task view and your menu is when you log into JD Edwards and you click that navigator button up at the top, what is presented to you. So you typically have, in standard JD, you have your EnterpriseOne menus. At your company, you're going to have your company X menus, and then all of the additional submenus there for your functional area. So your general accounting, accounts payable, purchasing, warehouse, those sorts of things. Those are all part of your task view or menu that you have in place to find all of your programs.
Perfect.
So no,
Thanks.
great question, Sherry, because that is
Yeah,
an interchangeable term that, having
it
been in
is.
JDE for quite a while, I sometimes call it menu filtering, sometimes call it task view filtering, but your menu and your task view are the same thing.
Yep. Thanks.
So what do we do with menu filtering or task view filtering efficiency? So again, we want to filter the roles or apply a fence around what is presented to the end users. So when you're doing this, if there's somebody who is in the warehouse, there's no reason for them to see the accounts payable or bill of materials. They're coming in, they're going to do pick, pack, and ship. That's all they need to see. So why make them navigate through all of these extra layers to get to what they need, or put it all up on favorites, and then if there's an issue with favorites and they're deleted, they can't find what they need again. With that, in JDE, you have a very easy way to apply the menu filtering or task view filtering. It must be done on a FAT client. It's done by role. It's very simple, very easy to do. With the ALLout product, they have a module called three-way match. This allows you to do your menu filtering either from the fact client where AllOut works or from the web client. And it allows you to very quickly and easily apply the menu filtering to multiple roles. In addition to that, with the three-way match, I can pull up all the roles assigned to a user and view exactly what that user can see without having to create a test user and copy the roles over and log in as them. I can effectively mimic their view within the three-way match program and see what they are allowed to see when they log into the system.
The nice part, I think, about what you just said about the three-way match, that you can see what they see. You actually see what they see on the task view, the actual names. So it's not like program or anything that's not understandable by the user themselves. It's actually whatever the term is that they would see on their menu. So on top of that, you can draw in the security to see if they actually have access to something too. So it's a really great conversational piece with management to make sure, hey, are these menus correct? You can see the terminology that the person's seeing. Does it match maybe the favorites that Brian's saying? So you make sure that you have everything in line. And on top of that, you can see if they really do have the true security to get where they need to go before you launch it out for them to try. So thanks for bringing that up.
Absolutely. In addition to seeing what they see, one of the nice things, and three-way match honestly is one of my favorite programs within AllOut, is I can also load the security. So not only can I see what the user is presented, I can see the security that they get when they get to that particular program or UBE. And I can also look at all of the form and row exits. So if I'm troubleshooting something for an end user, this is an extremely efficient way of being able to do that, to mimic or copy exactly where they're going, see exactly what they're clicking, and see what the security is. And if necessary, you can fix it from this screen as well. All right, so what are the costs associated with a menu click? And again, just like we talked about with the role conflicts, this is even more true. You're not going to see this money show back up in your employee budget area. But what is the cost of a click? So quantifying it, if you have one extra click per employee, again, using a smaller size company of about 150 users, having to do one extra click for every program, you're looking at a little bit over $33,000 a year in opportunity cost. Okay. Now, again, this is opportunity cost, not actual money back in your bank account. But what does this mean? Does it mean you're going to be able to hire another person in AP because of that? No, but what it means is that you are saving your users time and frustration getting to where they need to be. So you're making your user community that much more efficient by eliminating the number of clicks that they have to execute to get to where they need to be.
We did have a question there, Brian. So sorry, I was
Oh.
on mute. The question was the three-way match a separate program from what comes in the E1 package. So if you're talking about standard JD Edwards, the three-way match is not part of it. In AllOut, we have a package of modules for E1, and the three-way match is in our Menu Plus module. So we have 7 modules for JD Edwards, and we also have modules for World, and the three-way match is part of Menu Plus.
And as Sherry said at the beginning, AllOut is a subscription base, so you don't have to buy all of the modules. You can buy the modules that you need. So knowing that where the three-way match is, you can buy just that module and use it as much as possible to help the efficiency for yourself as well as your end users.
And because we write to the same tables that you'd be writing to, if you did a big menu rework and you were done with the Menu Plus module, you could resubscribe to a different module the next year, flip it out for something else, but the work you've done would stay there. So I think that's important to say too. So even if you get AllOut, the work that you put into it will stay in JD Edwards.
Right. It's written to all of the standard JD Edwards tables. All right. So our
Oh,
next.
this is actually my part. I need to
This is
unmute.
yours. I was getting ready to prompt you there.
So I got a question. Every time I mute and unmute, does it beep? Do you hear the beep or just me?
Just you.
Oh, just me. That's good to know. Okay. So I took this little piece to explain a little bit of what's changed, but it worked yesterday, but in an audit perspective. So you can log in, and there's another way that you can look at things is if you've had someone come in, they've worked one way, you've done something in the background, you're not sure what has changed. There is a great feature in standard JD Edwards called the F93 Audit History Table. And the Audit History Table is great to show those changes. It does need to be enabled, so it doesn't come automatically on. So that's something that you'd have to do and enable that audit history. But the benefit of that is that, hey, if I could do this yesterday and I can't today, and I want to see what was changed with that user or maybe that role, I could go and look at the audit history table. So let me show on the next thing on that is security auditing with AllOut is done using an audit history table, one of the many ways that we do it. And again, this is a standard JDE. There are standard tables within that JDE will automatically track. Those are on the event codes that are black. The event codes that are red are the additional event codes that AllOut can track for you. And on top of that layer on the audit history report, it is a table, but we add the layer that you can report on it. So let's say if the user logged in, but the role had changed, if you notice that on the role changes, you can track that in the 9312. So if a role changed for a user, you could see what happened, who changed it, and how was it changed, so you can know why it worked before and it isn't working now. If you do user changes, security changes, menus changes, you can track all of that. We have a nice dashboard that lets you turn on and off any of the things you want tracked in the 9312 table. But on top of that, when it comes to audit, oh, it's really nice because you can track also your SOD changes. If they changed an SOD rule, turned it off, and then ran the report and then turned it back on. If you just changed your critical list within the SOD rule itself, and an SOD is a segregations of duties. If you're being audited as a company, it is important. You can show whether the critical lists within those segregation of duties have been changed. And you can see so much more, even if you changed a mitigated control. And if you change something using AllOut, a lot of people ask me, okay, so I use the F00950 for my security changes in standard JDE. What if I use the AllOut to change my security? It tracks both with ours, so you're covered there. But now I have a big table. There's all this great stuff I can track, but there's not a real easy way to get it outputted. And we allow you to do that. So this is some of the reporting that you can do. There is a dashboard included in this. This is just a flat out quick report that I ran. I did it for a specific day for 2017. I don't know, I noticed we had some changes in our demo system then. And Brian, if you can click real quick, and it should do an animation. And what it allows you to see is what type of audit type was tracked, what time it was done, and what table was used. And click again. Then you can zoom in again. You can see if they add, if they changed, if they deleted. You can see who did it. In this case, I was demo. That's my login there. But if I was Al or if I was Brian, it would show who changed it. And it shows you the data that was changed. So for example, on the security, the data was changed on the security itself, and it tells you which program was changed. So if you notice, it says PAOS 0950. That was using the AllOut screen, but if you used a standard JDE F00950, the audit program would be told what was done there. Next screen. And so it tells you what user was affected or what role, what program, and it tells you if there was a critical list or rule, what was affected. So it shows you those before and afters, who did it, when they did it, and how they did it. So that audit history table, 9312, if you haven't thought about it, I would really consider, whether you have AllOut or not, consider putting it in to get approved to turn it on. If you're worried about, oh, it's going to collect all this data, I have not seen that. Now, Brian, on the 9312, I've never seen anyone having an issue. You come up with a standard routine of how long you keep the data, just like you do any of your data records. I see zero reflection of having an issue with performance. Have you?
I have never heard of a customer having a performance issue with data in the F9312.
Me neither.
But by the same token, as Sherry said, over time, it accumulates.
Yeah.
And with tracking log in and log out, that tracks a lot of information. So I would definitely recommend wanting to purge that, set that up with your audit team, understanding how far back you need to keep that information,
Yep.
what information needs to be kept, and then being able to purge, maybe not all of it, but selected data beyond a certain date.
So remember, you can do this in standard JDE, start tracking those security changes so you can answer those questions. Look at the table and see, why could I do this yesterday and I can't do it today? If you have the AllOut tool and your customer or prospect thinking about it, you also get the reporting part and the additional features for more audit and compliance stuff. And we all know that the audit history table is going to be updated in release 22 also. So that's fantastic. So it's a good time to start really thinking about the audit history table.
Absolutely. And I will say, from a administration perspective, trying to track down what changed and understand what roles were added or removed, that's relatively easy to see in the audit history. What's not so easy to see is what security changed. So no roles were changed for a user, but security was updated within a particular role. With the all-out auditing turned on, as Sherry said, you get your before and after. So I can see it used to be this setting and it changed to a different setting. So I can see what it used to be, not just what it is now. So it's a huge, huge benefit to be able to come in here, run a report, not just have to look through the raw data, but run a report for a user and say, show me everything that changed in the last 24 or 48 hours that's affecting this user.
Yeah, and you can do it by date or range of date, user, range of users. You can really fine tune the report for what you need. I have some people that just put it on scheduler. And so he wants to just track all his security changes to make sure that they're done and they were approved and they were done utilizing the right tool, because they have a different method of doing it. And he does that on a nightly basis using scheduler. That way he has a quick report, looks at it, makes sure all the security changes or anything that has been done, and he's already alerted if something wasn't done right, maybe before someone even comes in, or if the process they did to change that wasn't utilizing their methods. So it has a lot of potential. It's great for audit. I love this for audit, probably more than just that question, but for auditing purposes, this is great, because after you've gone your first year, the next year, you can just focus with your auditor what's changed rather than everything. So instead of looking at everything that a user does, and we're getting to a little bit of the money part here, right? Your annual cost for your audits, it is important. It is so much easier to go ahead and look at what's changed in that year than your whole everything. So it's the other part with AllOut with audit is, in standard JD Edwards, you have to download the tables, you have to do a lot of Excel spreadsheets, a lot of pivot tables, a lot of filtering. And the cost for that, manpower wise, of going through an audit and finding all of those reports and making sure you have everything that the auditor needs, is very time consuming for your team. If you're doing it manually, kudos to you. That is fantastic. But if you're looking for a solution for audit, AllOut does have that extra muscle for you. Again, something that's a little above and beyond. And we make that a lot easier for your audit. So not only using that audit history report, but if you need a segregation of duties report, if you need a critical list or user access. And when you start trying to do those kind of things, multiplying all the tables, it takes your staff a lot of time and money. So for example, here, this was based on a case study, and the next slide will go through it, on one of my clients. And they were going from doing it manually and taking 200 hours for their review. So let's just say the gal was doing a lot of this. I had a lot of this stuff while her kids were doing robotics in the evening and taking her laptop with her, spending a lot of extra time plus the work days before an audit to prepare. And look at those 950 records, 12,000 records she had to do, pivot table, look through in Excel. How many controls could she track? Only a certain number because it's just so much data. And they knew they were growing and they knew they had to find some other way to do it quicker. One, just physically couldn't get enough time in the day, and it was costing them their key players, their key person that is to do all of the data analysis before the auditor. It was costly for them just on that, for take her away from that, making her team do all the extra work. After implementation of AllOut, they were able to grow over double to 2,600 users. They were able to look at 920 programs rather than 180. The 950 records went, wow, double, right? So how do you even track that on an Excel spreadsheet? Kudos to anyone that tries, but they were able to make this part of their weekly process. They were hoping to go quarterly, but they were able to do this weekly with only like an hour or two. Actually, some of the reports went on scheduler. It would be sent to their CIO automatically or CFO automatically. They'd come to the meeting. Everybody could look at it. They could approve new users at the meeting with a three-way match report where they could see the menus. The management could approve things for them. They were able to approve any SOD violations if anything had changed in security with new auditors, and they were able to do that within their 2-hour meeting every week. Now, it didn't take them 2 hours, but it was easy. Then when the audit came, they were already prepared. They had the documentation done, and it wasn't as stressful and easy. So it does cost you money. I know you can do it, and there is some human error when it comes to it. And on top of that, how do you take into consideration that security hierarchy when you're looking at your security for a user? So when you log into JD Edwards, our reports will actually interpret the security hierarchy so you get a true value whether someone has true access to something for your SOD reports. And I think that's something that really gets missed.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, look at it was being done semi-annually before to being done weekly. So if
How
you're
many
looking at
gaps?
a compliance concern, having somebody with that SOD violation for up to 6 months versus maybe 5 days. So if there's somebody who is fraud minded,
Yes.
unfortunately, there are people out there who will see it and will look at adding to their personal bottom line at the expense of the company. You're finding it in a matter of days or hours versus months. So
It's key.
massive improvement from protecting company financial or physical assets perspective there.
And even if it's by error, Brian, it can cost a company a ton of money. So if you need any, help with business on what those costs could be, the ACFE.com, it's an organization that just gives you annual reports on fraud. They have some really great documentation on what fraud is, what it costs, what type of fraud is in particular for your type of business. So if your manufacturer, it sort of highlights where you should be looking. So look at the ACFE report. I think you'll find that useful if this interests you.
Absolutely.
So we're on to the next screen.
So there we go. All right, so our next obstacle, this is one that's coming up a lot more recently, is UDO security obstacles. So what are the issues with UDO security? So it can be very time consuming. A user with the role in UDO security, they get a new page and maybe they don't have access to all of the buttons within the page because the UDO pages don't match the security. So you've got to figure out what security role to assign to them in order to enable everything on that E1 page. And this means, we're looking at not just E1 pages. I use that as kind of a generic term, but we're talking the pages, the cafe one, queries, watch lists, everything that you do within the UDO realm is affected by this. And then managing access by user. I have found many companies right now that are adopting new UDO objects aren't sure what to do with it, how to manage it. They don't want to add extra burden to their security CNC team, so they're just granting everything at Star Public. Now we talked about the cost of a click. Now you have a huge menu, and now you also have 30 different E1 pages or objects that are out there, and it just makes it very, very difficult for a user to navigate and understand what they're allowed to do within the system. Perhaps you've assigned new functionality to a UDO page, but they forgot to grant the security on the back end to it. So you've got this nifty new button that does something for your business, but you can't use it because you're getting an unauthorized message. So getting everything put together there. So how do we get to be more efficient with our UDO security? So one of the things that I've long been an advocate for, and I know AllOut has been as well, is to align your menus or task views with your roles and your UDO objects or E1 pages. So what does that mean? That means that my task view for purchasing has a certain set of objects within it. My E1 page for purchasing has those same objects within it. And then I have assigned that E1 page or that UDO object to that role. So when I grant that role to a user, they get the page and they get the access to everything on the page that they need to be able to do. And this holds true especially for things such as your queries or watch lists. Those things are oftentimes handled as a one-off, and somebody gets access to a particular program, but then somebody forgets to give them the queries and watch lists that they need in order to be most efficient managing that part of the business. So aligning the menus, roles, and your UDO objects so that when you are simply just assign a role to a user, everything they need to have for it is granted to them with the assignment of that role.
And I think that makes the maintenance so much easier too, Brian. If you
It
know that this is what that role does and what they need to accomplish, whether how they have their roles designed, it just is more intuitive and easier to maintain.
absolutely. It's rather than having to remember to grant the UDO object and then the security and then the query and
Right.
everything else that goes with it, it's one click. You just grant the role and you're done.
Yep.
Everything comes in. Along with that, one of the areas for UDO management is it's using a new security table, the F00950W, for the web objects. That's only accessible from the JAS server, from the web. With AllOut, with our security supergrid, it is super easy to add, change, remove any of those UDO objects security to the user, and it's much easier to look and see and use QBE to search and filter who has access to what, and then to be able to update that, assign it to the roles. Excuse me. And then report on it. So all of the AllOut reports include the UDO objects along with it. So you can run a report, say, show me everybody who has access to this particular query or watch list or orchestration within the system. Simple, easy, and highly efficient.
And it works on the FAT or web client too. So
Absolutely. So UDO security costs, along with a lot of the others, I didn't put an actual number in here because it's much more difficult to quantify. Lost productivity for the end user, as well as your CNC or security admin and your UDO developers, trying to find what role gives access to those specific page buttons. How are they being constructed? I didn't mention before, specifically with your page objects, is if you use task IDs rather than specific program form version information, then the button is using the object as defined on your task view or menu. So if you need to make an update to it and you want to use version 3 instead of version 1, you simply update your task view or menu and your page is updated. You don't have to redo your development lifecycle of making the change in dev and pushing it all the way up. When you change the task view, you've changed what the button accesses. So it's a much more streamlined way of being able to manage that without having to redevelop anything. But the amount of time that I have had to spend and others have had to spend over the last couple of years in trying to figure out what role grants access to specific functionality for UDO objects. They're developed with sysadmin level access. Everything works great because you have access to everything. You assign it to a user who has only certain roles and certain functions within it. All of a sudden it breaks and you're spending hours trying to figure out what exactly these UDO objects are calling and then finding the appropriate role to assign to give them that access without giving them too much access.
And that's key, too much access. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right, on to our last one, which is many people's favorite type of security, which is data access or row security.
Are you
So what,
picking on me here?
you're not the only one. You're
Oh,
not the
I
only one,
know.
Sherry.
Um, I love row security.
So what are some of the obstacles that come into play when you're looking at data access security? And I use data access because it's not just row security. There's so much more that you can do in JDE with this type of security. So one is somebody could have access to all companies or business units within their operating environment. Maybe you've locked it down, but all of a sudden they're unable to process intercompany transactions. So if you have access to company 10, but not company 20, and you have a transaction that needs to flow between them, it's not. And all of a sudden, things aren't flowing through the system the way they should. The last one is, let's say you have a payroll clerk who's processing all the payroll, but you don't necessarily want that payroll clerk to see the salary of everybody that they're processing. So these are things that sometimes make it very, very difficult, and you limit, for example, a payroll clerk, not allowing them to run the process. It goes to a senior person because you've exposed some information there and you don't know how to overcome that. So just like with your role hierarchy for application, you have the same type of thing with your row security or data security. It looks at it in the same way. So it looks at the user level. Once it finds a record, it stops looking. Doesn't matter what else has been applied, it's done. If there's nothing at the user level, it goes to role sequence, starts with the highest one. If it doesn't find anything there, it goes to the next lowest one. And again, finds a record, it stops looking, doesn't matter what else is there. If there's nothing at the role level, it goes down to star public. Here's probably where the biggest issue is, because almost no companies that I've ever worked with have done row or data security at the star public level. It's done at a role. They grant only what they want them to see. But if you set up a user and somebody forgets to give them that data access role, guess what? They can see everything in the system. So how do you get efficient in it? One of the first ways that we recommend is the base way of operating for JD to look at that row security is to go with an inclusive mode of row security. The default from JD Edwards is to be exclusive. That's how it's shipped. You make the switch to inclusive and it basically inverts how it looks at security. So in exclusive, you would say company 10, add, change, delete, view, no, and you've only restricted company 10. In inclusive, if you wanted them to see company 20 only, you would say company 20, add, change, delete, view, yes. All other companies are automatically restricted. So it's a much more efficient way of applying the security. It changes the SQL statement on the back end. It improves performance, and it's a recommendation from Oracle JD Edwards to switch to inclusive mode of row security. It would be nice if they changed the shipped default to just be that way. Maybe someday. The next is dealing with your intercompany transactions. So when you've locked down access to only a specific company, but you need to be able to process company 10 and company 20, You're doing that using a specific program or UBE. You add exclusive application security, which is effectively a hall pass for your security to say, all right, for this process, I will allow you to affect both companies. So from an intercompany perspective, it allows you to, in all other aspects of the system, limit a user to a specific company, but when it comes to a process, it allows you to affect the other companies on that transaction. And the last one here is to apply your column security. So from a payroll perspective, you can apply column security so that they can still process the transactions, they can make updates to it, but they can't view it. So you can hide that salary button or that hourly rate button. I know a lot of union shops have had to implement that where that information is hidden from your HR payroll individuals, but it still allows them to process it. So what are some of the costs from a data access or row security? Again, orphan transactions, intercompanies. If you haven't allowed the transaction to flow all the way through the system, I've got half a transaction, I have the debit or the credit and not the other side of it. You end up with financial integrity issues. That's going to take untold numbers of hours in your finance team to track those down and fix them. You also have potential for exposure. So you could be exposing sensitive payroll information. You could be exposing social security numbers, PII within the system. So some financial costs and some reputational costs for allowing that information to be seen.
So I'm just going to give you a little heads up, Ryan. We got 5 minutes, which is perfect time to do a wrap up. What do you think?
I think we do. So
Yeah.
wrap up. So at the end here, what we want you to walk away with is when you're looking at all of these obstacles and efficiencies is you need to evaluate, know what your issues are. You need to understand what issues you have before you know how to fix them. Great way of doing that is to get a security assessment. We'd be more than happy to help you with that particular aspect of it. I believe we will have a link with the presentation once it's posted so that you can come out and schedule time so that we can talk about what a security assessment involves. Research. So once you know what your issues are, you need to understand how to resolve the issues are. What are the best practices? So how do you find out about that? Attend educational webinars, learn JDE website. Oracle provides a ton of great resources that are out there for free for you as a client that you can go and research and educate yourself on what are the best practices and how do I resolve some of the specific things that I need to resolve.
And if you're an
Next.
All Out customer, we have the All Out Academy, which goes over the best practices and security and 101s. So if you are, you can access that.
And there's a significant number of webinars and content that All Out has available on their website for customers.
Yeah.
Next is to plan. So you know what your issues are, you figured out what you need to do to resolve them. The last is to make a plan to resolve what to do and who is going to be doing it. I would recommend leverage your partners like ERP Suites and All Out Security to assist in your planning. And then finally is to start. Put your plan into motion and start realizing the benefits of having a radically efficient security model.
So we did get a couple questions. I know we're done, but flip to the next screen, I think, and then we'll start answering some of those questions. Does that sound good to you?
Absolutely.
So you can contact any of us. This presentation, one of the questions was can we share it? Yes, it will be able to be shared afterwards. I know Al and your team will be reaching out, letting everyone know what the recording is. Do you guys put it on your website for that, or is it just a link that people can go to?
I think Scott put the link in the answer.
Fantastic. Oh, there it is. He did put that in. And
Yeah,
then
so you'll get it from that link, and that'll be sent to your email later today as well. So if you don't get it from this Q&A, you'll have it later in your email.
Scott, appreciate that. And our next question, Brian, was which version of AllOut the page's UDO security is considered in the super grid and report? So version 3.3.2. And if you're not on the latest version of AllOut, you can go to the customer portal and download that. And so that is on the latest one in our customer portal.
Absolutely. And as Sherry alluded to at the beginning, upgrading to the latest version of AllOut is very simple and straightforward. You have 4 boomerang packages, and it will take, I don't know, roughly 45 minutes to get upgraded to the latest release.
Super easy. And then you'll be able to utilize that UDO security. And it's so nice to get that visibility using the super grids. It's really great. And if you have any questions on how to use the new portion of the 332 security grid, don't forget to download the catalogs on training on how to use the software. So if you're part of the academy, there's some really great tutorials and classes available to you on how to use it.
Right. And if you think of a question later that you would like assistance with, the link that Scott and Al will be sending out not only has a presentation, but it has a link to be able to schedule a 30-minute session with me at your convenience, and be happy to go over any questions you have, and as well as review what our security assessment offerings are as well. So we do have a free security assessment offering. So if you'd like to learn more about that, please click the link and set up time to chat.
I think I might already do that, Brian. I think I might have set up a chat with you already.
I think you did.
It's always good to catch up on security. I would have to say that Brian is one of my go-to people in the community also when it comes to security and compliance to bounce some great ideas at. So anything that you have as a concern or question when it comes to security, compliance, and I know he does cybersecurity, lean on him. He truly is an educator in the community. Along with that's what we try to do it AllOut. So don't be shy. Any questions, a good question in our book. And I know security is one of those very daunting tasks. I like to sometimes say it's a Pandora box. When you start to open it, you realize there's a lot more pieces than you expected. Lean on the community that's out there for you.
Absolutely. And I know we are at the top of the hour now. So once again, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. And as Scott said, the recording will be available on the website a little bit later this afternoon, and links will be going out to everybody so you can access that.
Thank you. And thank you, Brian. This was a great session. We're getting a lot of nice kudos in the Q&As. So again, thank you all for coming. Brian, that was fantastic. Thanks for everything, Al and Scott. I love doing these partner webinars.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great and safe holiday season, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you, everyone.